Welcome back to the High Ticket AI Systems podcast, where we talk with real coaches, consultants, and agency owners about what is really working to help them grow their business today in 2026. Today, I am joined by my guest, Alex Romanovich, um, consultant, legend in the making. Alex, would you mind giving the listeners a quick little introduction on yourself and what you're doing at Global Edge Markets?
Absolutely. Hello, Robbie, and hello to you and to your audience. I'm assuming worldwide. So, konnichiwa, and hello, and so forth. Uh, my path to consulting was actually interesting. I actually started a consulting work back in IBM days, IBM Global Services days, and but never considered being consultant on my own. It was a fairly circuitous path in terms of being a product manager, being an engineer, being a systems engineer, then switching over to sales and marketing with IBM and the companies like Silicon Graphics that nobody probably remembers. And then continued on the path working with tech companies, and then later on with startups and early stage companies, investors worldwide. So it's been a very interesting career in terms of working with very large brands and helping start a community of chief marketing officers called the CMO Club, which was later on sold to Salesforce, and working with mega companies like EPAM Systems, over $4 billion in revenue, to working with some very small companies that, and in many cases, fly by night startups and investors who are struggling to invest and justify those investments. All of that accumulated into lots of knowledge and lots of experience globally. I've traveled to 73 countries worldwide. I've done business in about eight. And I decided after running my own digital media and digital marketing agency on Madison Avenue, I decided to, for the past 7 years, to invest into Global Edge Markets, which is a business management go-to-market consultancy for global entrepreneurs and global brands seeking to expand globally. And sometimes they don't have an opportunity to experience success in their local market, which could be extremely small. Countries like Finland or Lithuania, or to a certain extent, even Singapore, who are always looking to branch out and expand, using the knowledge, using their skills, using their instruments they build, and so forth. And that's what my consulting path is really all about.
Amazing. So you've had a quite an impressive career spanning many decades. Um, I have to imagine you have watched a lot of other consultants and coaching agencies kind of rise and fall in your time. Being that you have so much experience, what do you think has kind of made your skills stick out and help you become so successful and help you work with the vast array of companies that you've helped?
Yeah. There's a glamorous side of consulting and the poetic side of consulting, and then there is, something you see in the movies, something you read about in the books, and then there is a very practical and very tedious and very, I would say, even boring side of consulting that basically said, look, you have to justify the resources. You have to find a good quality resource and balance it with, the ability to deliver that resource for the customer. You have to possess the knowledge. Hopefully you know more than the customer. Otherwise, you become as consultants sometimes called, a resource that tells you something you already know, just packaged a little differently. Um, so the successes and failures that I've seen with myself and people around me always depended on your ability to be resilient, to understand the balance between the value, between the knowledge, between the skills, and also the practical side of it. Something that helps you pay bills every day, and pay resources, and pay your partners or commissions, and so forth and so on. So consulting is not as glamorous as being portrayed sometimes, but it's also not as ugly as it's being portrayed by some folks as well.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Um, I feel like it's been a constant theme recently with just, you know, in my experience, the people I've been talking to, this conversation of ego and how ego kind of has to shift depending on where someone is in their entrepreneurial journey. You know, when you're very young and you're first getting into something, whether it's starting a business or sales, or you know, you go out door knocking. I started knocking doors. You almost have to have an immense level of overconfidence and ego to say, I have no facilities, no networks, no skills yet, but I'm going to go out there and win at this. And then when you get farther down the line, and you're in a position where you actually kind of know what you know, and maybe you know a little bit of what you don't know too. If you don't start to lower that ego, it could hinder you from growing. In your experience as someone who has worked with you know some very high level sophisticated companies and clients, do you find that ego ever almost gets in the way of your ability to consult someone if the client say has too much ego, or if they think they know what the problem is already? Are you understanding what I'm putting down?
Absolutely, absolutely, and I've experienced that with myself. I've been humbled a few times in my earlier career, and you have to also practice. You can be aggressive, you can be very forthright, you can be very direct, but don't confuse that with ego and being arrogant. Arrogance is not something that is viewed very positively, especially now, especially with the advances of new technology like artificial intelligence and so forth. You can't, you can't profess to say that. Listen, I know a lot. I have a lot of experience. A lot of that experience is already packaged. Is already packaged in the artificial intelligence. Is already packaged with best practices and methodologies, and so forth. We recently launched something that we call GEM IQ. Global Edge Markets acronym is GEM, and we always joke that it was always very difficult to compete with GEM and GEMs, in terms of search engine optimization and search or whatever. But it's actually helping
You
us
mean like a
because
gem?
GEM, exactly,
Okay.
GEM.
Yep.
The acronym for Global Edge Markets is GEM, GEM, right? So it's actually working for us in terms of slogans and marketing slogans and branding and so forth. We uncover gems all over the place. We all over the world. We help companies become gems and so forth. However, um, that experience of taking our process, our knowledge, our methodologies, and packaging it into a number of assessments and self-service assessments that allow companies to actually look in the mirror and say, listen, am I ready to go to the new market? Am I ready to go and experience enterprise sales? Am I ready to transform my business with the use of AI and so forth? So there are a number of different indicators for companies that otherwise, you would have to hire consultants, some of them arrogant, some of them that will say, hey, I know everything about AI there is to know, and you don't. With the use of AI, with the use of methods, with the use of knowledge that has been accumulating for so many years, you now have the ability to self assess, to in the self-serving kind of a model, and not hire somebody in the very first instance, right? And this is a very good analogy, a very good sort of description of how to avoid that arrogance, how to avoid that experience, almost an experience that could be sometimes very disappointing, because again, arrogance does not equate to knowledge. Arrogance does not, or bravado, or um, ego, pure ego, does not translate into knowledge necessarily, does not translate into methods, into processes, especially when they're becoming personalized and they're trying to align with, exactly what you're doing, and not something that somebody already knows and trying to template you into their methods.
What question? What do you think would be more harmful to a company growing? Would it be a leader who has too big of an ego to let somebody else show them what their problem is? Or would it be a consultant who comes in and their ego is too large and maybe they aren't fully looking at the full picture the way the company would want them to?
Um, well, first of all, um, I have a theory that ego attracts ego, right? People that are very egotistical, people that are very arrogant, actually appreciate and um, you know uh, appreciate similar type of folks, right? Appreciate that narcissism, appreciate that um, that approach, if you will. So it would be very unusual if somebody who would be very humble but would know their business well, somebody who would have the knowledge of their business, for many many years, would portray a number of forgive me for the background noise from New York City,
No worries.
from the streets of New York City. Somebody that would possess the methods and so forth, that would attract somebody with a huge ego. So that would probably an immediate clash of characters, if you will. However, I think it's equally dangerous to invite somebody in who does not understand your business, who does not understand your trials and tribulations, does not understand the industry challenges, does not understand a lot of different things about your business, or does not make the time or the effort to learn it. Right now, you have to be careful because a lot of clients in the consulting business do not want to pay for somebody to learn something about their company. You probably heard the saying that says, listen, I don't want to pay you to learn more about my business, right? I don't want to pay you to do an audit or to do a, um, you know, to do what's the word that a lot of people hate? Um, to do some kind of
Like
a
a discovery process.
like a exactly that's the word I was looking for, the discovery process, or some kind of an X-ray methodology or something like that. And this is why a good self-serving or self-service, I should say, self-assessment could be a very interesting approach to say, look, let me actually share with the number of tools or even AI some of the things that I already know, and let's see what the accumulation of that knowledge and those methodologies can tell me, right? And then I can go back to that same arrogant consultant and say, look, not only I know a lot about my own business, I also know about a lot about some of the methodologies that McKinsey is using or could be using to approach something like this. So I can actually leverage and use some of these methods to self-assess, to diagnose on my own terms. So it's very, very dangerous to have somebody who's arrogant but not knowledgeable to attract to your business.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. That if you're not, typically a boastful, prideful person, you're probably not going to end up working with somebody who is exhibiting a lot of those traits. And it was interesting that you said people don't want to pay you to go through that discovery process. But I feel like a leader, a well-rounded leader, would be able to look at their situation and say, okay, obviously I don't understand the full picture. I need to bring somebody in who has dealt with these types of things before. But I feel like they would also should have the tact at that point to understand every business is so unique. This guy is going to need
Yes.
to take some time to get to know exactly what we do, all of our processes, all of our theories behind everything. You don't find that?
I do find that, and this is goes back to your question about arrogance and about ego. There are a lot of folks in very senior roles that are being displaced right now. There are a lot of folks that are in transition. They're, frankly, they're being laid off from, major corporations, from major consulting companies like McKinsey, like BCG, like IBM Global Services, like Monitor, and so forth and so on. So, in that sense, the question then becomes, what are those people going to do? Are they actually going to go and consult on their own? Are they going to, will they be using or developing their own methodologies, and so forth? Um, the point is that you have to you cannot be a generalist and consult somebody in manufacturing, in robotics and machinery. Okay, that's not going to work. So you have to go through your own self alignment and self assessment process to understand, listen, what are my strengths? Where am I going to actually be? Where can I afford to be arrogant or to be aggressive, so to speak, right? So if you come from a particular industry, great. That's your grounding. That is your focus area. If it's a lot easier for you to learn more about consulting methods and coaching methods and mentorship methods, knowing something about the industry or knowing a lot about the industry than the other way around,
Of course.
right? So in that sense, I think there's if you are in the position of just starting the consulting engagement or just starting consulting path, if you will, because you got displaced or because you don't have your job anymore and so forth, self-assess yourself. Become that a critical component, become that criticism component of yourself to see, look, where am I aligned best? What value can I bring to the table for small, medium-sized business if I was in a very large company? How can I scale myself down, for example, instead of scaling yourself up? How can I embrace their problems and personalize, their issues, and sort of adapt what I know to what they really need? Those are the kinds of things you have to have. Number one. Number two, you have to possess a certain level, or I would say high level, of emotional intelligence. You have to almost put yourself in their shoes and say, look, economically, that makes absolutely no sense. I would love to sell you more of the engagement. I would love to sell you more hours and so forth. But economically, it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And this is where AI tools come to play. It happens a lot with some of the early stage companies when investors, take those business plans, take those financial models, plug that into some of the tools, look into their experience and knowledge and say, hey, it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. They're not prepared at all. They have not done the homework. Go back and do your homework, right? And humble yourself because we're not going to invest into this particular company on those particular terms.
Yeah, yeah, that makes total sense. I think that is what completely separates a uh, smarter consultant from someone who is just thinking more like a business and in terms of profits. Like you said, like, yeah, I would love to take some more of your money and run another campaign. But if I do that step now, you might not be around the next time you would have had to hire me, or the next time, or the next time. So yeah, by not taking your money now to do X, Y, Z, which you think I should, I'll actually advise you against that so that you can continue to flourish, and you'll keep giving me business, and we can work like what do you call it, a symbiotic partnership. Um,
Correct.
I think a lot of what you said resonates a lot with our own agency. I think we have a constant conversation around relationships. And, in 2026, people are looking for human touch with all this AI automations going on. And a lot of the people we work with are resonating the same messages. And it's almost like when you're out, talking with prospects, let's just say, you can kind of tell, okay, this is going to work. We're going to be able to help these people. They're going to be able to help us. Or you can kind of tell, like, I think I would be able to make this work, or maybe I could, get them to hire me, but they're gonna be one of those clients. And I think that's an important thing to look for as you become more mature, as you gain more experience, knowing kind of not just who do I want to sell to, but who do I actually want to work with? Who do I want to be a part of my business, growing it? And we love to talk about client acquisition on this show. In your own experience with global edge markets, what do you do? What do you, give out that lets you attract the type of clients you want?
Well, I ran a marketing agency and a lead gen agency for quite some time, and a lot of those techniques and a lot of those strategies are still very valid for today's consulting and business management consulting and solopreneur consulting type of firms. Um, there are multiple ways of generating leads, obviously. There are multiple tools that are out there. There are multiple platform companies that will promise you the world. They will promise you, hey, we're HubSpot or we're Salesforce, and we're an amazing CRM system. The leads will literally come off the platform to you, and we're Sales Navigator and from LinkedIn and so forth, and we're
Right,
the
right,
perfect tool to generate leads and so forth. However, lead generation process today should not be confused with the process that promises automation or promises something that says, hey, I am going to give you an amazing platform, all in one platform that is going to start writing emails for you, that is going to scan your inbox, that is going to respond on your behalf, that is going to drill into your data and package those absolutely amazing responses and outreach campaigns and so forth and so on. Guess what? There are spam filters. There are inbox, gatekeepers, automated gatekeepers. There are a number of different tools that actually would want to prevent that behavior, those tools and so forth. That will prevent crawling. That will prevent scraping, and so forth. So lead generation today is still technology based, but lead generation today is also human based. We have a very good approach, and I'm a still strong believer in making sure that you have good quality content that you produce, that you become sort of a mini publisher. And with the advances in AI, with the advances in other tools, you actually can become a better publisher. Just make sure that you don't forget about your own voice, your own human voice and humanized voice. Number one, it has to be authentic. It has to come from you. It has to be supported by research, and it has to be supported by tips and tricks and some of the knowledge that you can share pro bono before you make your first consulting dollar, if you will. So that's one approach, and that still works. The other approach is still very human. Go to the conferences, pick your particular field. If it's manufacturing, great. In Chicago at Automate 2026 was an amazing show, amazing conference, gave you kind of a glimpse as to what's happening in the world of robotics and the humanoid robotics and industrial robotics and machinery, automation on the manufacturing floor and so forth and so on. I mean, you could probably learn from that environment. You can learn from that 3 or 4 day conference so much. Is it an investment? Absolutely. You have to invest your time, you have to invest your money, but the amount of value you get by talking to people, by understanding their challenges, by understanding the vendor, the vendor community, by understanding the client community, going to some of the award meetings, understanding what actually is being awarded to whom, and what is being considered leadership, what is being considered success in that particular industry. That's invaluable. So I strongly suggest for you to pick a particular area and go to that trade conference. Try to avoid some of the generalist conferences or something, but go to that. Prior to that, I was in the American Physics Society conference. About 15,000 physicists from all over the world coming to Denver to talk about quantum computing. I've learned more about quantum computing in those 3 days that I've learned in the past 10 to 15 years.
yeah. Are
So
you a
again,
physicist?
I'm not a physicist. No. Do I look like a physicist? No, no,
Almost.
I'm not a. I'm not a physicist, but I know a lot of physicists,
That must
and I
have been
appreciate
intimidating being around
it.
all those.
You know what? And it's those are the types of experiences that you have to endure. I almost thrive. I almost absolutely love to pursue a very uncomfortable experience.
Yeah,
Right. That's what made me leave IBM after 15 years, after being at the top of my game, after making some really good money in the late 90s. I said, you know what? I absolutely am afraid of this career of 25 or 30 years of IBM, I want to venture into something entrepreneurial, right? And I think you have to a certain extent, today, especially today, in the world of that is even more competitive than ever before, in the world of innovation, in the world of technology is moving so quickly, you have to stress yourself. You have to give yourself a good stress test and immerse yourself into some of these environments to say, you know what, the only way I'm going to learn is if I'm going to jump into it.
Right. Yeah. And that's an incredible point that I don't feel like people bring up enough anymore these days. And I'm certainly a victim of it too, is you can go meet people in person. Not everything
Yes,
has to be online with tech and social media, whether it's LinkedIn or whatever. But you can go meet people in person. And to be fair, I think the amount of ways to do that are dwindling. But if you're someone who can overcome that and put yourself in the right position, you'll just be the person that's in the right place at the right time to make the right
absolutely.
connection.
And I think your ability to go someplace to capture that experience. I mean, you have a podcast, we have a podcast, to capture those conversations and turn them into really good quality content. To be courageous, not to be afraid to stick your neck out there and say, listen, I may not understand everything, but I understand one very important thing, that the world is still human. Yes, we're going to have robotics. Yes, we're going to have artificial intelligence. Yes, a lot of us will be replaced in certain positions. But what's not going to be replaced is your ability to drive, your ability to lead, your ability to set the tone, your ability to take the content and or gather content and turn that into something valuable. Almost productize it, almost package it, and imagine that you are a consultant selling to a particular customer who does not understand this, right? And your job is to teach them. Your job is to pass that experience on to them so they can be successful, right? And so if you possess that ability, if you can be humble enough to say, "Look, I'm learning, and I'd like to share that learning with you," right? And I think that's a human quality that no AI will be able to compete with.
So I think what I'm getting from this is Alex Romanovich is not the slightest bit worried about some robot coming to take his job anytime soon.
Absolutely not, because I'll be teaching that robot to a lot of things that the robot needs to know to do that job, right?
There you go. And then it will just go take everybody else's job.
Well, again, self development is going to be extremely important. Courage is going to be extremely important. You're going to have to flex your muscles. You're going to have to go to the gym and exercise and learn and flex your muscles and prepare yourself for what's coming. And half of that stuff we don't even know what's coming,
Your
right?
mental human muscles you're talking about.
Absolutely. Your
Yeah.
mental human muscles, your emotions, your emotional intelligence, your ability to process information in a very unique way. Our brains are wired uniquely. Every brain is a very unique type of a wiring experience, if you will. And your job is to learn more about yourself. And I think AI is going to give you that ability, that self assessment, that self service model that says, you know what? Let me, before I even do consulting, let me learn more about myself, what my strengths are, what my weaknesses are, and so forth. And I think that's a good starting point.
Yeah, totally. I feel like using AI, at least you know how I use AI, it calls me out on a lot of my own bullshit and tells me some perhaps misconceptions that I have, whether it's about work or just relationships in my life. It's weird how a robot, something that's just memorized a bunch of patterns can help you out so much.
And I think you're asking the right questions. The questions about ego, right? Listen, I've been in the industry for 30 plus years. AI with all the hallucinations and everything that's out there right now, all the garbage that it's spitting out and so forth, cannot possibly compete with me.
Hmm.
Yes, it can. What it can do is it can stress your ego. It can actually push you. It can offer different angles that you haven't even thought about, and it can give you a lot more information in the form of research and in the form of crawling the competition, if you will, competitive analysis and so forth. Something that would take you hours and hours and possibly days and weeks. Something that can give you that in about a few minutes. So that's important. That's very important. That self-assessment is extremely important.
Yeah, I totally agree. If you're using it properly, if you know how to prompt it correctly to use it as a tool, it can be a huge help. On the other hand, I think it's also possible that people can use it improperly and they can have
Yes.
a lot of, frankly, wrong information be fed back to them and to feed their false narrative. But that's a whole other conversation. Um,
It's a whole other conversation. Hallucinations galore, right?
yeah,
Actually, one of our clients is a company called Jackson AI. And Jackson is a very interesting platform. And there are a few other platforms similar to that one that are basically talking about, you know, offering AI for AI, checking AI for hallucinations,
yeah,
making sure that it's checked against policy, against standards, against the truth, against data that's been collected and it's been used in the real data format. Because you're absolutely correct. AI can call you on some of this, pardon the expression, bullshit, but it can produce some of it on its own.
yeah. No, totally. Alex, I want to kind of start to reel this in before we totally bring it to a close. I'm curious, as someone who has gone through the ranks as much as you have, for let's say the next 12 months in talking, dreams, numbers, visions, what are you hoping to bring to Global Edge Market or yourself?
Um, Great question, by the way. And the answer is self development. I continue to self develop. I continue to go back into the past and extract only the most useful things I can extract. For example, I'm doing quite a bit of vibe coding right now. I used to be an engineer, I used to be a developer. And even though I developed in the very different languages with very unsophisticated tools and so forth, the structural, the left side of the brain, the right side of the brain meet together, and the structure meets creation. And I think that's very important, is to stress yourself in that way and to really discover what are your strengths that you can bring to the table right now. Right. So that's one piece of it, if you will. The
Amazing.
other piece of it is the future is moving. Well, we're moving towards the future very, very quickly. The best you can do is learn and apply some of that learning in situations where you can sort of fuse your knowledge, fuse your experience with some of the challenges that your customers may have, your partners may have, and you may have. And that process of fusion is an extremely important process. So I think the next year, the next 6 to 12 months is going to continue to be the world of discovery for us and for me personally. That process of fusion, the fusion of experience, knowledge, new technologies, and learning, if you will, and passing all of that on to our customers and partners. Sharing is the best form of learning. So that's what's gonna happen in the next 6 to 12 months.
Amazing. So big ideas are getting bigger.
Right. And I'm sorry for being very general and kind of high level, but if we had to get into the details, we would probably need at least 3 to 4 hours.
Okay, yeah, we can schedule. I got 3 hours tomorrow.
I was kidding. I was kidding. We do have a podcast, and we're about to launch a set of self-service products and self-assessment products, and we're going to continue, generating good content on the different channels. So you can look me up and look our company up and so forth. We appreciate you giving us time and sharing this with your audience. But hey, there's lots and lots of information out there and lots of knowledge to be shared.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alex. You weren't too high level at all. I think you provided so much insight just in kind of the way you mull over some of the facts in your own mind. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about you or Global Edge Markets?
Go to Global Edge Markets, which is our website. You can also look me up, Alex Romanovich. Google will do the rest. And our podcast is Global Edge Talk. So those are very, just like it sounds, just like it's spelled. So easy ways to find us.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Alex. We appreciate you coming on the show. We appreciate everything that all the knowledge you've bestowed upon us. And to the audience, that was the episode. We will catch you on the next one.
Thank you so much.